The city of Manhattan never truly sleeps, but at 3 in the morning, it breathes a different kind of air. It's cold, unforgiving, and smells of wet pavement and expensive ambition. High above the deserted streets, on the 42nd floor of a glass and steel monolith, a single light remained on. This was the headquarters of Sterling and Associates, one of the most powerful corporate law firms in the United States. Inside that office sat Marcus Sterling, a man whose name was whispered with equal parts respect and terror in every boardroom from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. Marcus was a shark, a man who had built his empire on the broken dreams of competitors and the exhausted spirits of his employees. He believed he was untouchable. He believed he was the smartest person in any room. But Marcus Sterling had forgotten one very important thing. The person who holds your schedule, handles your secrets, and brings you your coffee every morning knows exactly where you are most vulnerable. Maya had been Marcus's executive assistant for 5 long, grueling years. In the world of high-stakes law, 5 years is an eternity. She had survived longer than any of his previous assistants, most of whom quit in tears within the first 6 months. Maya was different. She was the ghost in the machine, the invisible hand that made sure Marcus's life ran like a Swiss watch. She knew his passwords, his mistresses, his offshore accounts, and the exact shade of red his face turned right before he was about to fire someone. To Marcus, Maya was just a piece of office furniture. Functional, reliable, and entirely replaceable. He never looked her in the eye. He never asked about her life. He didn't even know that Maya had graduated top of her class at a prestigious law school before a family tragedy forced her to take the first job she could find just to pay the bills. He saw a servant. She saw a target. The abuse wasn't always loud. Sometimes, it was the quiet, condescending way he spoke to her in front of clients. "Maya, don't just stand there like a statue, get the files," he would say, his voice dripping with a casual cruelty that stung worse than a slap. Other times, it was the 2 a.m. phone calls demanding she find a specific vintage of wine for a party he was hosting, or the way he would throw his coat at her without looking up from his phone. Maya took it all. She became a master of the poker face. Behind her neutral expression and polite, "Yes, Mr. Sterling," she was observing. She was learning. She realized that Marcus wasn't just mean. He was sloppy. His ego made him believe that no one was smart enough to catch him. He cut corners. He skirted the edges of legality. He treated the law not as a set of rules, but as a series of suggestions that didn't apply to him. She began to keep a journal, not a diary of her feelings, but a log of his inconsistencies. Every time he asked her to fix a document, she kept the original. Every time he made a shady deal over an unsecure line, she noted the time and date. She was building a puzzle, and Marcus was handing her the pieces one by one. The revenge didn't start with a bang. It started with a whisper. Maya knew that if she moved too fast, Marcus would notice. Men like him have an instinct for survival. You don't kill a king by charging the front gate. You do it by slowly poisoning the well and waiting for the fever to set in. 6 months ago, Maya began the dismantling. She started with the small things, the things Marcus was too arrogant to double-check. A missed meeting with a minor but influential journalist. A slightly altered typo in a multi-million-dollar contract that delayed a closing by 48 hours. It was like pulling a single loose thread on an expensive silk suit. At first, nothing looks different, but eventually, the whole garment begins to unravel. Marcus began to feel the pressure. He couldn't quite put his finger on why things were going wrong. His reputation, once spotless, began to show cracks. Clients were calling with complaints about miscommunications that Marcus couldn't remember. His partners were starting to look at him with a newfound skepticism during their Monday morning briefings. "Maya, where is the Apex file?" he would scream, slamming his fist on the mahogany desk. "It's right where you put it, sir," she would reply calmly, knowing she had tucked it under a pile of irrelevant tax forms. He would search, find it, and feel a momentary lapse in his own sanity. Was he losing his edge? Was he getting old? The seeds of doubt were planted. The turning point came during the Apex merger, the biggest deal of Marcus's career. This was the deal that would define his legacy. If this went through, he would become a billionaire. If it failed, The firm would likely collapse under the weight of its own debt and several aggressive lawsuits. Marcus was obsessed. He hadn't left the office in 3 days, fueled by caffeine, ego, and a growing sense of paranoia. He treated Maya like a dog, barking orders and throwing files at her when she wasn't fast enough. He didn't realize that Maya had been in contact with the opposing counsel for weeks, not as his assistant, but as an anonymous whistleblower. She wasn't giving them the whole story. That would be too easy. She was feeding them just enough information to keep them one step ahead of Marcus. Every time Marcus thought he had a gotcha moment, the other side was already prepared with a countermove. Marcus was losing his mind. He was the shark, but he was being hunted in his own waters. On the night before the merger was set to close, the atmosphere in the office was suffocating. The air conditioning hummed, but the room felt hot and cramped. Marcus called Maya into his office at midnight. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his tie was loose, and his hands were shaking as he poured himself another glass of scotch. He didn't ask her to sit. He didn't thank her for staying 18 hours straight. Instead, he threw a stack of papers across the desk. The sharp edges of the heavy bond paper caught Maya's cheek, leaving a thin red line. "You're useless," he spat, his voice low and dangerous. "You've been off your game for months, Maya. I don't know what's wrong with you, but I don't care. Once this deal closes tomorrow, you're done. I'm firing you, and I'm going to make sure you never work in this city, no, this country, ever again. You're a nobody. You're nothing." Maya felt the sting on her cheek. She felt the warmth of a small drop of blood trickling down. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply stood there and looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw the fear behind his eyes, the insecurity hidden by the expensive suit. And then she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It wasn't the polite, submissive smile she had worn for 5 years. It was the smile of a predator who had finally caught its prey. "Is something funny, Maya?" Marcus sneered, leaning over his desk, trying to intimidate her one last time. "No, Marcus," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Nothing is funny. I just realized that you've spent so much time looking down at me that you never noticed I was the one holding the ladder." She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a small, encrypted flash drive. She placed it gently on the desk between them. Marcus looked at it, then back at her. "What is this? Another one of your mistakes?" "That," Maya said, "is every bribe you've paid to city officials in the last 3 years. It's every tax document you forced me to adjust. It's the recordings of every verbal threat you've made to your staff. And most importantly, it's the transcript of the call you made this morning to the Apex CEO. The one where you tried to insider trade your way into an extra 10% before the merger." Marcus's face went from red to a ghostly, sickly white. He lunged for the computer, his movements clumsy. "You wouldn't. You have no proof." "I don't need to prove it to you, Marcus," Maya replied. "I've already proven it to the SEC and the FBI. I sent the files 20 minutes ago. And since I know you like a good story, I sent a copy to the lead investigative reporter at the Times. They've been looking for a reason to take you down for years. I just gave them the roadmap." The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus collapsed back into his leather chair. The king looked small. The air left his lungs in a sharp hiss. He looked at Maya as if seeing a ghost. The furniture had developed a soul. And it was a vengeful one. "Why?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "I gave you a job. I gave you a career. I paid you more than any other assistant in this city." Maya walked toward the door, but stopped to look back. "You didn't give me anything, Marcus. You took my time, my dignity, and my peace. You thought you were playing chess, but you forgot that the most powerful piece on the board isn't the king. It's the one that can move in any direction and goes unnoticed until it's too late." As she walked out of the office, she didn't look back. She walked past the empty cubicles, past the expensive art on the walls, and down to the lobby. The night air was cool and refreshing. The next morning, the world woke up to a different Manhattan. The headlines were exactly what Maya had promised. The fall of Sterling, one read. Corporate titan arrested in federal sting, read another. The news footage showed Marcus being led out of his Park Avenue penthouse in handcuffs, a jacket draped over his head to hide his shame from the cameras. The firm dissolved within a week. The Apex merger became a case study in corporate fraud. The partners scrambled to distance themselves, but the trail Maya had left was too clear. Maya, however, didn't stick around to watch the ashes settle. She didn't want the fame. She had used her savings, and a very legal whistleblower reward, to leave the city behind. Months later, Maya sat on a deck overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sound of the waves was a far cry from the honking horns and sirens of New York. She had a book in her hand, and a glass of wine that she had picked out herself. She wasn't an assistant anymore. She wasn't invisible. She had survived the Shark Tank and come out stronger. Sometimes, the best way to win isn't to fight the monster. It's to let the monster destroy itself while you hold the mirror. Maya looked at the scar on her cheek, now barely visible. It was a reminder that no matter how powerful someone thinks they are, everyone has a weakness. And usually, that weakness is the person they think they can ignore. The sun began to set over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. For the first time in 5 years, Maya wasn't checking her phone. She wasn't waiting for a command. She was free. And in the end, that was the best revenge of all.